All right. Here is essay number 2. So first, we're going to be talking about resting membrane potential. So, RMP, which is the resting membrane potential, there are a couple of things that affect this. First, this is, I guess we'll go like this. This is for a neuron. So we've got sodium potassium pumps. That helps to pump against the gradient, and since it's pumping out more positives, it ends up making the cell more negative because it's bringing in 2 positives, but it's taking out 3 positives. There's also negative charged proteins that also help to bring down the electricity of the cell, make it more negative. There's also potassium leak channels. So potassium will go in, but also potassium will go out. And these potassium leak channels help to bring it back to equilibrium because overall there will be more potassium leaving. So it'll make the cell more negative, but this causes the potassium to want to go back in. That's just how the electrochemical gradient works. Let's see. So those are the 3 things that affect the resting membrane potential. There are also yes. Okay. So there are also some other things as well. We've got voltage gated sodium channels, and we've also got voltage gated potassium channel. So these are activated. So the normal resting membrane potential is about negative 70 millivolts. Because the inside of the cell is more negative than the outside. Okay, so for action potential, we have this thing called threshold. So threshold is when the cell becomes less negative. It's about negative 50. When it reaches threshold, it is able to have an action potential. And this is an action potential. So the action potential, once it reaches threshold, this voltage gated channel opens, and all the sodium leaves. Actually, sodium enters the cell, making it more positive. So the cell becomes less negative. And that makes it jump in the action potential. And this is called, right here, depolarization. This is repolarization, and this is hyperpolarization. So once it passes threshold and it becomes depolarized, this voltage-gated potassium channel opens. And this allows the potassium to leave the cell. And that makes the cell more negative. So it brings it back down, but it's hard to regulate exactly bringing it out to -70. So sometimes it is hyperpolarized. And that is when it is too negative. But it will come back up to the normal resting membrane potential. So with the things that affect the action potentials are the voltage sodium channels and the voltage potassium channels. There is an activation gate and an inactivation. So this just closes when there's enough sodium in there. Once it's past about 30, positive 30. So actually around 0. And then let's see here. Okay, so with the action potential, you have what's called amplitude. So if, say, you have a chlorine, so this will be normal here. So it goes to about positive 30. If you have a more negative cell, say you have a chlorine leak channel, this will cause this to be, the resting membrane potential to be lower. So then this will still go to 30. The amplitude will be 110 instead of 100. And then if you have let's say you have a potassium channel blocker, this will make the cell less negative because the potassium can't get out of the cell. Well, it still gets out of the cell, just slower. So this will make it'll make it about 90 for the amplitude. Let's see. Okay, now we need to talk about driving force. So driving force. So, driving force, the Vm is the resting membrane potential, and the Ex is the Nernst value. For that specific ion. So, the larger the driving force, the greater the current will be. So the driving force, when a channel is open, there's a short amount of time that chemical and electrical gradients allow things to pass through. Yes, that's for driving force. So for the Nernst equation, the Nernst equation is this. Let me check my notes real quick, just to make sure. Negative 58.1 millivolts. The log of X and X. So this is out, this is in. Outside the cell, inside the cell. So this predicts the equilibrium potential. So this assumption that this would work is that the ion that we're thinking about is 100% permeable, which is not true. So there are large driving forces wanting to push the molecules in or out, and the Nernst equation tries to pinpoint exactly how much millivolts are needed to keep that molecule at equilibrium. So this is the Nernst equation. Okay. So we kind of already talked about action potential, but we can talk a little bit more about it. So it goes like this. This is threshold. So let's see. So the initial coming up is like 1, 2, 3, 6. Okay. So, right here, excuse me, this is when it's depolarizing, but not quite enough to reach an action potential because it hasn't reached the threshold yet. But when it reaches right about here, that is when the voltage sodium channel is opened. And then you can have that action potential. And then this is depolarization. So right here is when the sodium channels, no, not the sodium, the potassium channels are all the way open, and the inactivation gate closes. So this is called the absolute refractory period. And then this is right here is repolarizing. Well, kind of, to like right about there. This is hyperpolarization, like I mentioned before. And then this is the relative refractory period. Sorry, my handwriting is horrible. Okay, so that covers all that. Now we're going to talk about capacitance. Okay, so with capacitance, you got the positives on the outside. So the membrane interference is low. And the capacitance is high. Has a high capacitance. The Ri, which is about right here, is, let me think about this. Is higher. So this makes the length constant. I guess we draw it like that. Lower, because it has all this interference in the cell. So say you got this and the Bois, it doesn't go as far because there's interference. So this would be not myelinated. This one would be myelinated. So you got less charges, and they've got more ground cover to still be trying to like connect, you know? So the membrane resistance would be higher, and the internal resistance would be lower, and the Buang would be bigger, so the length constant would be higher, and the capacitance would be lower. That is pretty much capacitance. Let me see here. So yeah, myelin versus non-myelinated. That's pretty much it. Yeah. And I think that's everything. Just let me know if I missed anything.